Shortly after purchasing this product and doing extensive searches on YouTube trying to find a review video, unfortunately I have not been successful to find a single review video on this Atlas HO scale ALP NJtransit 45 locomotive. So from the looks of it, I'm either going to be, if not one of the first, but the first to do a review video on this locomotive. I normally don't do review videos because, number one, I just don't feel like I'm that good at it. I believe somebody else can do it much better. I'm better when it comes down to the operation and showing the locomotive in action. But nonetheless, considering the fact that there's not a single review, I figure I might as well go ahead and do mine and do the best I can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to briefly talk about some things that I like about it, dislikes about the locomotive. Then I'm going to get into some sound functions, and then I'll do a couple of quick run-bys on a piece of test track, and that'll conclude this video. So here we go. Okay, so if you've checked the Atlas website, you know that this is a product that was next up on the list to be released sometime in late February, early March, and here it is. This is an NJtransit ALP45 replication. The real thing comes with the option to run on diesel or electric. So this would be known as a dual mode locomotive. For electrified territory, you have your overhead pantograph, which will pretty much attach to the overhead catenary and supply the locomotive with power via electric. In diesel mode, you'll be running your locomotive which is equipped with two 12-cylinder Caterpillar engines, which generate roughly about 4,200 horsepower. This locomotive in this set, I purchased the locomotive as well as a 3-car passenger set. One coach with a bathroom, and 1 cab car. All of them come with lighting features and are equipped or are compatible for a sound decoder as well as a speaker. The one thing I've noticed about the cab car is that the cab car, since I do not have a sound decoder installed inside of the cab car, the headlights, marker lights, and ditch lights all stay illuminated at the same time. Down the line, as I decide to get a sound decoder, that should leave me the option to be able to control the cab car along with sound and control the lighting features separately. As I've said before, all coaches come with the compatibility to be equipped with DCC sound decoders. As far as the locomotive is concerned, I'm just now breaking it in. I've ran it a couple of times. It seems to run pretty smooth. It has a nice pulling weight. The detail in it is very accurate, very crisp. The sound functions and the speaker alone, it has a very clear sounding speaker, very clear sound. It doesn't sound distorted, and it actually is a pretty good performer. As far as some of the things that I dislike about the locomotive, when you start your locomotive, and it's not even about the locomotive, but this is pretty much about the people who record the sound file. And this is not a deal breaker. This is just something that I wish they would take a little bit more time to include this feature. If you know anything about starting locomotives, you know when you start your locomotive that you have which is called a start-stop isolation sequence. That's just for mainly starting the locomotive. Once you get the locomotive running and it's nice and hot and you're ready to start moving your train, you throw it into run. When you have it on start-stop isolation, your prime mover is in what's called a low idle sequence. Once you put it in run, it then kicks into a high idle sequence. If you put the reverser in there and you throw a direction to that reverser, it's normally going to put it into the high idle sequence as well. So any of these things can put your locomotive into a high idle sequence considering how your locomotive is mapped out. Now, considering the fact that this is a passenger locomotive, passenger locomotives are equipped with something which is known as HEP, also known as head-end power, which is a feature that distributes electrical power to the passenger cars for heat, electrical air conditioning, and any other electrical features. Many locomotives run head-end power through a separate generator that stays at full RPMs throughout the entire time that the locomotive is in operation. However, you do have many locomotives that run head-end power through the main engine block off of a separate alternator compartment on your main generator. So consider the fact when you fire up this locomotive, what you're going to notice is that it's going to do a perfect startup sequence, but it's going to stay at a low idle. It sounds just like a Caterpillar engine, which pretty much sounds like a larger version of a truck, of a diesel truck. but you don't have the high idle sequence, which also you would need to order to replicate the head and power sound file functions that this locomotive actually does on the real railroad. However, nonetheless, it's not a deal breaker for me. I wouldn't deduct much points off of it. As far as the passenger cars are concerned, what I've noticed is that the couplers come with a spring mechanism that pretty much will allow the passenger cars to stretch. Let me see if I can demonstrate that just for a bit. If you look all the way over to the end here. So it has this feature where it allows the passenger cars to stretch. I don't know whether that's good or bad. Like I said, I've just started breaking it in. I only have a piece of test track, so I don't really have the means to really do a thorough break-in with this locomotive. But so far, everything seems to run smooth. As far as what I don't like about the locomotive, in addition to all the things that I do like, is the fact that when you look at the locomotive, the front of the locomotive directly underneath the headlight and right in between the ditch lights, there's supposed to be a set of grab irons that are directly underneath these two lights, which aren't there. What you're going to notice is when you take your locomotive out of the box, it's going to come with a separate packet with those grab irons for you to install yourself. Now, if you take a good look at the nose of this locomotive, you're not going to see any holes or any inserts. Let me see if I can clear this camera up just a bit. Focus on that. Come on, come on. You're not going to do it. All right, let me try this. But anyhow, you get the drift of what I'm saying. You don't see any inserts for the grab irons for the locomotive. Now, I've contacted Atlas to ask them why that was, and they said the reason why they didn't put those grab irons in there is because they would not stick in there. They kept on falling back out. So they left it up to you as the modeler to install these features yourself. Pretty much when you open up your packet, you're going to see a separate device that you use to drill the holes, and you're going to need to purchase, I guess, a very fine drill bit, and it's supposed to be some kind of device that's supposed to help you or guide you into drilling these holes. Now, that's a very big problem for me because me as a modeler, I don't feel it is my responsibility or duty to have to install things that should already come installed on a locomotive. My whole thing is I want to be able to take the locomotive out of the box, unwrap it, set it on the track, program it, and run it. Nothing more, nothing less. As far as all the other installing things are concerned, then I would be in the manufacturing and I'd be making money to actually sell these products. And since I'm a consumer, I don't think that it's very fair to the consumer to have to go ahead and go out his way or her way to go ahead and drill holes. And mind you now, if you don't know what you're doing, you can actually destroy a beautiful piece of equipment that you might not be able to get if you damage it again, because depending if they only make one run of these things, that's pretty much it if you can't find it again. Which is another reason why I don't deal with another company called Island Model Railworks, which makes some of the very same rare locomotives that you're not going to find from most of these other companies. They do a whole lot of stuff. Long Island Railroad, Metro North, the NJtransit, ALP45s. They do all that stuff, but I will not purchase from them because you have to assemble and put these things together. Not only that, but you have to paint them while doing all this. Once again, as a modeler, I feel that that's not my responsibility to have to do so, so I'm not going to waste my time doing it. And if the company is not going to take the time to put it together, I will not waste my time purchasing from that company. However, this is not applied toward Atlas. I'm just saying this as far as a general statement. But I do wish that Atlas would have taken the time to go ahead and put these grab irons on there, or figure out what could have been done to make better arrangements to get them put on there rather than leaving it to the installer to do so. The next thing I'll say that I don't like is that when you open up your box and take your locomotive out of the box, what you're going to notice is you're going to have your locomotive, your separate parts, and then you're going to have your warranty, and then you're going to have your parts manual. But what you're not going to find is an operations manual for DCC. So that's something that I kind of don't like. I've never purchased a DCC locomotive where it did not have an operations manual for DCC compartments. So that I would have to deduct a couple of points off of that as well. So as far as the locomotive itself is concerned, the detail, I would have to give it, in that department, probably about a 7 or 8. As far as the effort that Atlas put into it, I think they could have went just a little further to make sure they put on the grab irons and things of that nature. So I would have to, probably about a 7 and 8. Do I recommend buying this locomotive? If you're a passenger guy such as myself, I most certainly would recommend that you go ahead and buy it because it's a very detailed locomotive. A lot of the stuff is accurate. The paint scheme is crisp. It comes with a lock sound decoder, which is one of the better decoders, and it has LED lighting. So with that being said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually play some of the sound files, and I will tell you how they're mapped out. If you want to pretty much what I did to get these functions, I called or contacted Atlas directly, and I had them email me a copy of their sound file map outs, so that way any given time I can go ahead and print it up if I need to. But in either case, I'm going to go ahead and I'll run down the list for you if you want to try to write this down and put it for your own manual so you know what it is, or you can contact Atlas directly and get this for yourself. So let's get into some sounds. The first function on this is F0, which is for your headlights. So put that on. And when you throw it into reverse, your marker lights automatically illuminate and your headlights and ditch light shut off. Just as a side note, as far as the headlights and auxiliary lights, they do not come on independently. You pretty much have once you turn on your headlight, your auxiliary lights come on as well. I don't think that's a feature that you can control independently. Also, they do not oscillate, which I don't believe that the real ALP45 has oscillating ditch lights anyway, so that's prototypically accurate. However, I do know that you can run your headlights independently of your auxiliary lights. The next thing that I've noticed, and this is something that I kind of don't like, is when you go ahead and do this really quickly, zoom in on that. When you turn on or throw it into reverse, I do like the fact that automatically your headlights cut off and your marker lights come on. But the only problem is, toward the rear of the locomotive, you have a headlight in the rear of the locomotive as well as ditch lights. However, the ditch lights in the rear of the locomotive are not operable from what I've come to find out. But whenever you throw it into reverse, as long as you have your marker lights on, that rear headlight is going to be on. I don't know if you can necessarily see it, and that's kind of something that I wish they did not do, because I'd like to be able to run the locomotive and have the marker lights on and have all the other lights off. But that's the way they configured it, so we'll have to go from there. So the next thing is, when you let me just deal with the lighting function. F6 is to brighten and dim the lights. So let me go ahead and zoom back in on the headlights. F6 brightens it, dim. One more time, brighten them, dim. F12 also dims your headlights as well. Also, in addition, what you're going to notice is when you start to move your locomotive, your headlights and auxiliary lights will automatically brighten up themselves, and when you stop the locomotive, they will dim themselves automatically, which that's a good feature as far as I'm concerned. So I'm glad Atlas took the time to put that in there. Now, F1 is for your bell, and this is known as what they call an e-bell, an electronic bell, which most newer locomotives are equipped with nowadays. Then you have F2, which is your playable horn, which is a K5LA. Now that is a K5LA which has been modified through NJtransit. From what I understand, they've taken the time to modify the horn so it wouldn't be as they would actually reduce the sound or the noise that it puts out. So Atlas, when they recorded it, this is why it sounds or stands out from your typical K5LA horn from your typical locomotive that you would buy on Lock Sound, which is prototypically accurate, so I got to give them credit on that. F3 is for your coupler slack. And once you cut it off, that's the sound that you get. Now, from what I've gathered, if you choose to keep F3 operable while you're actually running your locomotive, which you're going to notice whenever you start to move your locomotive, whether it be in push or pull mode, you're going to get that coupler slack sound, which I guess would be prototypically accurate, because that's, you're pretty much going to have some slack that you're going to have to either take or give as you're pushing or pulling your train constants. So F4 is for your electrified territory. So when you want to run in electric mode, you press F4 and that will start up the electric sound sequence. However, I've noticed that the overhead pantographs, I don't think that they function automatically. I think you can raise it up. However, I have not taken the time to really fool around with it to see what it can do. But I don't think that it's something that you can operate through a button. The next thing that you're going to notice is when you press F4, the sound of your air compressor is going to automatically come on, which is prototypically accurate because you have to generate air pressure to supply brake power for your train. So let me go into F4 right now. There's the sound of your air compressor right there. I wish I would have waited just a little bit longer, but nonetheless, it is what it is. Air compressor just cut out. Alright, so now we're in electrical mode. F5 is for your radiator fans. Get the radiator fans back off. As I've explained before with F6, I'm not going to go into it because I just demonstrated the fact that it brightens and dims the headlights, so let me skip on to that. F7 is for switching mode, but you don't get anything out of it, or at least maybe I have to be in operation before it actually does anything. Just as a quick note, I gotta say I do love the way that compressor sounds coming in and out automatically. And that is an automatic feature that comes on and off automatically, or you can operate it manually through, I believe it is F20 or F19, one of those two. Let me finish with the sound functions. So F7 is for your switching mode, which, like I said before, it doesn't do anything. F9 is for no. Sorry, I'm skipping. F8 is for your diesel mode. So let me cut off the electric mode. Now, when you start up your locomotive on diesel mode, you're going to get the sound of two startup sequences because, as I've mentioned before, this is a dual engine, 12-cylinder Caterpillar engine. So you hear two sequences and then you pretty much get everything on the low idle. You're not going to get the high idle like it normally sounds or when it's running in HEP mode, but you'll get the low idle. So let me go ahead and start the electrical mode, or in the diesel mode, sorry, F through F8. There goes your second startup sequence. Okay, so that's F8. F9 is for your air conditioner. And of course, when you do F8, you're going to get the sound of the air compressor coming in and out automatically as well. So let me let that stop and now I'll do F9 for the air conditioner. There goes the sound of your air conditioner. Now, the one thing I must say, I do like when companies take the time to add in those little extra details when it comes down to the sound. Because me, the way I like to run my stuff, according to the seasons, I like to run it accordingly to that season. Like for instance, Rapido had taken the time in their steam-equipped FL9 units that they made back in 2015 to equip them with not only steam-generated details, but a steam-generated sound file. Let me cut the air conditioner sound off. And pretty much what I like to do is if I'm making a video and I'm doing it in the middle of the winter, I'll run that steam-generated sound file to replicate the fact that it's cold outside and you're replicating some heating for the passenger cars. With this locomotive here having the air conditioner sound file, you can pretty much, if you're running a video on a hot summer day, you can replicate the fact that you're giving air conditioning on a hot summer day. So stuff like that I do give kudos to when companies take the time just to add in those little extra details. Okay, so F10 is the short air let-off. And that does sound great. F11 does nothing, and F12, as I mentioned before, is a dimmer. which since the lights are as dim as they can possibly be, it's not going to serve any purpose. So from F12 all the way to F17, you have nothing until you get to F17. F17 is the brakes releasing. So pretty much as you move your locomotive, you're going to get the sound of your brakes releasing, and as it stops, you hear the same air let off. And also, as I mentioned before, as you start to move the locomotive, you're going to have your headlights light up, and your headlights and your dish lights are going to illuminate a little brighter, which is prototypically accurate, and that's typically what trains are supposed to do. So let me go ahead and move it briefly. There goes your brake release. Your brake set once again. Put it back in reverse. And as you've noticed, the headlights illuminated as I brought it into got a dirty section of track right there. Alright, let me just get the lights back on. Okay. So what I would do is I would cut off start the main generator sound up again. So that is F17. F18 is for your sander valves. Let me let it finish the startup sequence, and I'll play the sander valves for you. I'll try that right now. There's your sanders. F19 is once again for your short air let-off, which is also mapped out in sound function 10, which I don't know why they got that set up in there like that. So I'm not going to run through that one again. F20 is for your compressor, which you can operate it manually, but since it's been coming on and off automatically, there's no reason for me to go ahead and play that sound file again. F21 is for your spitter valves, which I don't think that is necessarily prototypically accurate for an ALP45. I've recorded quite a few of these locomotives, and I don't ever once recording hearing the sound of sander valves or spitter valves going. Sorry about that, not sanders, but spitters. But nonetheless, it's a feature that's in there. If you want to use it, you can go ahead and use it. So I will shut those off. And I will shut down the main generator sound. And if I didn't mention it earlier in the video, as you can see that it has a very crisp, clear sounding speaker. So like I said, once again, I would recommend this locomotive if you're a passenger guy like myself. I would say this is a must get. You can probably get it at a discount if you buy it at Train World and add it to your cart. I know I got it at a discounted price. You can also pick up a couple of coaches to go along with it. I plan on buying I plan on buying 2 more of these locomotives. Another one in the NJtransit paint scheme and a different road number with another consist of 6 or 7 cars. I plan on adding 6 to 7 cars, or having 2 6 or 7 car train sets for each locomotive in completely different road numbers to make them completely different trains. There's also another contest like this that runs out in Canada with the same ALP45 as well as the Bombardier bi-level passenger car set. I don't know the name of the railroad, but I know later on sometime this year Atlas is supposed to be releasing them. So I do plan on purchasing a few of those, or maybe 1 or 2 of those as they come in. So to sum up this review video, I'm now going to do a quick operation video on a piece of test track. I'll do a run by of a few video clips in electrical mode and a few video clips in diesel mode, and then we will conclude this video. And that will sum it up.